There's this sort of lovely idea that the words we use to talk about enlightenment are just like a finger pointing towards the moon. So they're not it. They're just sort of giving us a glimpse of something. Yeah, welcome to Dharma Night. So we've been exploring a book called The Three Jewels by Sangharakshita. He's the founder of the True Ratna movement and order that we're a part of. And the chapter that I'm going to be looking at this evening, or that I'm kind of riffing off of, is on enlightenment, on the goal. And so I'll talk for a little bit, and then me and Amarapuspa, I haven't primed you for what I'm going to talk about, but we'll I think you'll like it. We can have a little conversation afterwards. And I brought along the Buddha Rupa that's actually on my shrine at home. And this will feature in the talk. I'm very much enjoying this shrine cloth as well. Yeah. Good. So I thought I would start off with a poem by Sangharakshita called "The Unseen Flower." Yeah. Okay. Something like, compassion is far more than emotion. It is something that springs up in the emptiness, which is when you yourself are not there. So that you do not know anything about it. Nobody, in fact, knows anything about it. If they knew it, it would not be compassion. But they can only smell the scent of the unseen flower that blooms in the heart of the void. Yeah, so I thought I'd start off with this poem because it evokes something of the kind of unknowable nature of enlightenment. This poem's kind of drawing out the more sort of the kind of compassionate element of enlightenment. But yeah, I sort of love that it kind of hints towards that sort of unknowability, which I just kind of wanted to start off with. So I can't really kind of like tell you what enlightenment is in this session, and that's not because of the brevity of the talk. But the very kind of nature of the goal of enlightenment is something that's not kind of like graspable with our kind of normal kind of consciousness. It's kind of ineffable, mysterious, sort of goes beyond concepts and the words that we have. Because of course our language, our words come from our minds, and so the words that we have reflect the fact that we have kind of a limited mind, limited consciousness. So our sort of words, of course, kind of can't express something that sort of goes beyond that kind of mundane, limited mind. And yes, it's kind of unknowable, sort of beyond words. But thankfully, there are things that can be said. Amarapuspa's got this great phrase of we need words to go beyond words. We need words to go beyond words. So I could, and it has been known for teachers in the past to great teachers to sort of sit in silence, in a great silence, and for that to communicate something about the nature of enlightenment. I've occasionally been tempted to do that in a session, but I thought it might just make everyone feel awkward. And I also don't think I've kind of got the kind of weight to sort of, communicate something through that kind of silence. So I will use words. But there's this sort of lovely idea that the words we use to talk about enlightenment are just like a finger pointing towards the moon. So they're not it. They're just sort of giving us a glimpse of something. And actually, the moon itself is a lovely symbol for enlightenment that's used in a lot of poetry. Actually, I've got. I'll come on to that a bit. But yeah, the moon does say something about enlightenment. So I thought I'd start there. Actually, there's loads of ways in to talk about the goal. Of drawing out the kind of different aspects of the enlightenment experience, and there's whole sort of schools, traditions that do this in kind of different ways. They do that in different ways. But one of the things that I've been sort of particularly drawn to at the moment is in the realm of symbol. And symbol can get drawn out in poetry. So yeah, sort of poetic expressions of something about enlightenment, I think, can kind of stir us in a way sometimes that kind of more like conceptual language might not. I mean, I get quite a lot out of reading quite conceptual texts, but there's something about a poem sometimes that kind of gets something of the heart. We're like, oh yeah, that's a bit like it. So you have in that poem, The Unseen Flower, that we can only smell the scent of the unseen flower that blooms in the heart of the void. Like, isn't that mysterious? Isn't that mysterious? So, yeah, so you get these images that can get evoked in poetry. I really do love, actually, that Sangharakshita both wrote a lot of, he taught a lot about the Dharma and did a lot of sort of translation of Buddhism into kind of sort of language that we'll kind of feel familiar with, concepts that we feel familiar with. But he was also a prolific poet. He wrote a lot, also wrote a lot of about his life. But yeah, he did a lot of poetry writing. There's all sorts of images that come out in his poetry. But you also get, there's a whole history of Buddhist images. I love looking at Buddhist art. I think it's fascinating. I think it brings out the kind of richness about enlightenment, in a way that, contains sort of so much. So yeah, so I thought, well, obviously we've got our big Buddha Rupa here, actually in the this mudra. So often part of the imagery that we get is what the images are doing often with their hands, what the figure's doing with their hands. So that's the earth touching mudra. Yeah, I wanted to talk about this Buddha. Yeah, it feels really lovely actually bringing him in, because I've had him on my shrine for, I think I worked out today, it was about 10 years. I think it's about 10 years now, and it's been such an important image for me to kind of sit in front of. I'd love to say daily, but I have really struggled in the past with having a regular meditation practice. But he's been out wherever I've been living. He's been around, yeah. And so yeah, so what does this image communicate about what enlightenment might be? Yeah, so we've got this kind of deep kind of peace, stillness, contentment, poise, a sense of energy actually as well. It's harder to get from maybe a sort of small stone, whatever he's made of, Rupa, but yeah, there is a sort of quiet energy there. But yeah, that it comes from, it's not a sort of forced, it's not like in, when you see images in like full lotus position or whatever, it's not like someone's like forced their bodies into this kind of rigid kind of balanced state. But the posture reflects an inner state of deep contentment, of non-grasping, non-hatred, through seeing things as they really are. Yeah, so the Buddha says a lot, and I'll come on to that in a bit about what the Buddha's communication says about enlightenment. But there's something even just about the non-verbal communication of a figure like this that points towards something, I think, very profound. Yeah. So you have images like this, but it's also great to go and have a look at kind of all the other images, I think, as well, that have been kind of developed over the thousands of years now that Buddhism has been practiced since the Buddha's time. Wild images, surprising images, shocking images, beautiful images, as Buddhism's kind of been translated in all sorts of different cultures. It's kind of the Buddha's teaching has kind of met the imagination of the people. That it's kind of been brought to, and so all these kind of different images have come up. And at my ordination, I was giving a meditation practice on the figure of white Tara. And what I love about these images, they really sort of go beyond like what is just in like you just see in the normal world around you. So white Tara, well, she's made of white light, but she has 7 eyes. So along with her normal two eyes, she has one eye here. She's got eyes in the palms of her hands and also in her feet. And I love that. Like, what's that about? What does that say about, it's not like when I get, if I become enlightened, I'm suddenly going to have like eyes on my hands, like some sort of slightly odd alien-like creature. But that says something, doesn't it, about, how sort of she is in the world, the knowledge. And there's lots you could say about the eyes. She's got this kind of radiant white light, like like moonlight. So I now love. I mean, it's a bit hard in London, but I love being able to get out to see the moon because it's something around being that quality of light. Particularly in the darkness, and there's a sort of softness to it, maybe that you don't sort of get quite with the sort of the harsher kind of sun. And there's something about being out at night as well, that kind of like time of day feels like, there's some sort of wisdom in that kind of time of day as well, in which the full moon, particularly when the full moon is around, communicates to me. Yeah, so we've got imagery, we've got all these images that we can just get curious about, see what you're drawn to, what you're not drawn to as well, can I find this sort of quite interesting. All of these different images are just drawing out something, each sort of something about the sort of different facets of enlightenment. Sort of just play around with them. And the other thing I just wanted to talk about as well is the Buddha's life. So one of the things that's really important to me about sort of remembering about the goal is it's not some sort of like abstract thing that sort of happens in some sort of like separate universe or something. I used to sort of have to remind myself, like the Buddha's like not a unicorn or a dragon or something, like he's like a human. And so the goal of enlightenment is experienced through the human body, and the wisdom that he attained, realized, you can kind of get a sense of it through his behavior. So I love this aphorism from Sangharakshita of wisdom shines through in behavior. So we can kind of talk about the nature of the Buddha's wisdom and how that kind of comes out in all these different images. But we can also get a sense of it through his behavior and what happens when that enlightened mind comes into contact with other minds, other consciousness. And I love reading about the Buddha's life. There's all sorts of stories that we talk about. There's one about him meeting a woman called Kisagotami, who's kind of mad with grief with the loss of her child, and how he responds to her, and the stories of him encountering like murderers and kings and queens and all sorts of people, all sorts of beings. And one thing that I sort of love about these stories is when I sort of think, I might sort of be drawn to particular stories about the Buddha or particular images. I've been working a lot on communication at the moment, and one of the things stories I've been drawn to, is when the Buddha is like very direct in a way that I would probably find sort of quite uncomfortable. And one I was reading recently actually was of. It's at the end of this book. I love this. I mean, it tells you the sort of thing that I'm interested in. So this is the Buddhist teachings on social and communal harmony. I really love these. His various dealings with all these kind of monks. But there's one in here actually where it's a collection on settling disputes, and there's one in here on forced eviction. So basically, there was the Buddha was with the monks, the assembly of monks, and was going to be teaching them, and he realizes that there's someone in the assembly who's not quite what he seemed, and this man is described as being immoral, of bad character, impure, of suspect behavior, secretive in his actions, not an ascetic but though claiming to be one, not a celibate though claiming to be one, inwardly rotten, corrupt, depraved. And having seen him, so the Buddha, he rose up from his seat, went up to that person, said to him, "Get up, friend. oh no, actually no, this is Moggallana, Moggallana, he's one of the chief disciples of the Buddha. He says, "Get up, friend, the Blessed One has seen you. You cannot live in communion with the monks." And when this was said, the person remained silent. What happens is this person, he's given an opportunity, very traditionally 3 times, to kind of make amends, be honest about his behaviour, how he actually is. And I imagine then, in sort of Buddhist tradition, you sort of recognise your sort of faults, you work on them, but you're not sort of cast out just because of it. But this person, he refuses to kind of recognise that he is sort of being deceitful and sort of trying to be in this assembly, when he's not really acting in accordance with it. And so he gets thrown out. He gets thrown out by Moggallana, who actually has to grab him by the arm. He said, and then the Venerable Maha Moggallana grabbed that person by the arm, evicted him through the outer gatehouse and bolted the door. And I really like this because it's quite, it's very direct, and it sort of cuts through maybe some of my ideas that sort of practice and progress or something is maybe just about sort of being nice. And I can sort of probably hide behind that because I find sort of conflict and difficult communication, or difficult, like I imagine a lot of people do. So in a way, it's sort of comfortable for me to have images of the Buddha around like a bit like this, or just stories about him that just sort of feel very comfortable and very sort of wonderful. But there's something about this story, just like some of the images that we can get of maybe more kind of wrathful or energetic figures, that maybe sort of cut through some of my ideas about what enlightenment might be about. Yeah. So there we go. I'll leave it there. There's all sorts of ways that, as I said, that we can get a bit closer to the nature of enlightenment. But I just wanted to focus this evening on imagery and the Buddha's life, his behaviour with other people.
Oh, well, thank you, Aryanisa. I really appreciate how many different elements you brought in about approaching the goal of enlightenment. As you said, the Buddha said a lot about how to get to enlightenment, but he said relatively little, because, as you said, it's quite captured in that poem about the mystery and how I can understand why you're quite drawn to symbols to take you somewhere that words can't. Yeah.
What have you sort of been drawn to lately as your kind of way in?
Well, I don't know, it's funny, as I was sitting here, just the simplest things, really, just things that we have around us, like colour. I was just looking at the yellows of this cloth and the blues of that cloth, and there's a lot of deep associations we all have with colours, and it made me think of what Buddhists have done over the centuries around associating different colours with different qualities of enlightenment, and this splendid yellow and gold associated with supreme abundance and generosity, and the blues associated with that gesture of earth touching, this sort of groundedness, imperturbability. I mean, it's just, once you get started, there's, it's just something so universal about symbols, and there's something universal about enlightenment, even though it's hard to reduce it to words. I guess Buddhists would say we all have that potential, so somewhere we can resonate with a poem or a colour or something like that lovely figure of yours.
And I often have a bit of a game with my partner if we're out walking. We were doing the London Loop, and we had a bit of a game of seeing if we could spot a Buddha in someone's garden or their window, because there's so many images out there. And I just find that really interesting, actually, that there's something about the image of the Buddha in meditation that people are drawn to. They're drawn to, even if it's just to have a figure that you pop in your garden. you've chosen that image over like the rabbit or the gnome or whatever. You've gone for the Buddha. Like what? Yeah, there's something in that, I think, that does sort of draw people in.
It's interesting, but there are different things that draw, and different figures that draw us, like you with white Tara. And I heard a Buddhist teacher say recently, even the ugliest figure, the Buddha, is still a representation of enlightenment. So it doesn't matter so much about our likes or dislikes. It's about something that points us to something higher that we can develop towards.
What images have you got? Any particular images on your shrine at the moment?
I have a red image. I mean,
I really associate you with red, actually. I was thinking, like, when you said colour, I was like, Amarapuspa is red.
I do have white Tara on my shrine, because I do love that, what you said about the softness of the moon, but also the perfect sphere of the moon is often associated with enlightenment. So there's something about perfection, the circle and the full moon. The Buddha supposedly gained enlightenment under full moon, and then the red Buddha, that color, whose color is associated with the loving compassion aspect. So and I was thinking these flowers too, and the poem, and the color of the kind of flame-like color, which is also associated with that particular symbol. The fire, fire, the element of fire, which invites us, it gives us a sense of transforming, fire transforms, kind of cuts through, and you were talking about cutting through. So that's fire creates a space, it kind of burns away something maybe that's obstructing.
As I'm hearing you talking, it's like, so many of our symbols, they're just from the natural world, the moon, flowers, the light, fire, and they're all sort of the mudra of touching the earth. There's some things, one of the things I was thinking about was of the Buddha as part of the Enlightenment experiencing everyone as lotuses emerging from the mud, just in different stages of growth. That's one of the images I kind of really love. Around the kind of natural world.
That's a beautiful image associated with the Buddha's enlightenment. And then the White Lotus Sutra later, it's about each person evolving according to their their rate of growth, their potential at different times. So it's like the plant world. It's this image of the rain of the Dharma, the rain of enlightenment falling equally everywhere, and then each plant responding in its own way, and it's all quite mysterious. You don't really know what's going on inside a plant, but before you know it, you might have a tree or something. So, but to me, it just points to enlightenment being a natural state. That there's something natural and universal that we can resonate with, even if we can't pin it down in words.
And have there ever been any sort of like images or symbols that you felt like, oh no, not so much that one?
I think we all have our different, but I think it's also good, in practice to work with our preferences. Something I've had to do, but it doesn't mean you have, because Buddhism arose in a very different culture and country, so some images can seem quite foreign and alien to us, and I think I've worked to, just be open. It didn't feel like I had to like them. At the same time, have a bit of openness to it, and then more and more Western Buddhist iconography is coming up. Some of which I like, some I don't. But I think it could all be just quite simple. Like maybe just like you have stayed with that beautiful Rupa for 10 years. Maybe it's just something that we connect with.
It's very interesting with taking on the White Tara practice, because I this is so funny. But I always imagined that I take on a figure that's very sort of like active, very kind of like active, sort of energetic, something. So if we're talking about working with our sort of preferences, and yeah, I find this very interesting when I sort of went through this process. Funnily enough, with this figure on my shrine for so long, yeah, because she's in full meditation posture. And I remember saying once in a sort of talk a few years before ordination, when I sort of started getting a connection with white Tara, that I was surprised that it wasn't even green Tara, because at least sort of green Tara had a foot out in the world, so she's sort of stepping down. And if anyone knows anything about me, like so much of like my work's always been about like sort of, you know, like responding in the world. I've often got myself burnt out from doing that, but yeah, sort of very much kind of like out there. And I was like,
action woman.
yeah. So I was like, I'm like being more and more drawn to this kind of like stillness and kind of like poise, and I do feel that in myself now actually. But yeah, I really get that sort of, it's not, what you need is not necessarily the one that you think you do, but it sort of comes about in interesting ways.
So you think white Tara has taught you more the value of stillness?
Yeah, perhaps, and how to be genuinely responsive. That genuine responsiveness comes from that stillness. Yeah.
Which are the, you know, the qualities of enlightenment, aren't they?
Yeah.
Gosh, but there is just so many ways over history, like words saying what it isn't, you know, words that are positive, paradox, description.
Yes, the paradox stuff really boggles my mind.
But I just think, I'm just glad tonight we've stayed with the symbolic approach, because I do think it's so rich and with imagination and something I think we can all respond to.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thank you so much, Aryanisa.
Yeah, lovely to get to talk to you about it as well. Yeah, great.
Great, so I hope you enjoyed that Dharma night talk. So if you did enjoy it, if you're enjoying our videos, I just want to ask you or encourage you to think about making a donation to the Brixton Buddhist community. We're a UK charity that relies completely on your donations to run everything here. And if this was a class, a meditation class, there'd be a donation bowl that you could just put in £10 at the end of the night to help support the activities. But as you're watching this online, I just want to ask you to think about making an online donation. If you've watched 4 or 5 videos this month, maybe you might want to think about giving £10. So there's a link in the description below where you can go to our website and make a donation. And if you want to keep giving, you don't want to worry about making that donation every month, well, you could just set us up a standing order, a monthly standing order. That would be really, really helpful. I want to suggest something of the region of maybe £10 or £20 a month if you're able to do that. And that would be really, really helpful and help us keep producing videos like this one. Thanks for listening. Take care of yourself.